So let's bring in here the Chief Executive of Bonza Airlines, Australia's most recent low-cost carrier, Tim Jordan, from his base in Coffs Harbour. Tim, many thanks for your time. Is it as simple as that more competition simply creates better performance from the existing airlines?
I believe it actually is. It's a very significant part of the answer. When you look at market sectors across the country, those which are have the better performance tend to be where there are more aligned competitors in terms of significant players in the marketplace. What we have here in Australia, one of the reasons for our being is because we looked around the rest of the world and saw that there was no low-cost independent operator in Australia, and hence we were able to come to the market. And we have just started our journey of shaking up that market. And ultimately, we're here to make things better for the consumer, bringing more routes, more low fares, and hopefully in time, improved performance from airline operators. Keeping everybody honest, if you like.
I was going to ask you about your own experience so far. You started with 4 aircraft. Your aspiration is to have 8 by the time that this year's over. But along the way, trying to get those airline slots. I know you're out of Melbourne at Avalon, and also you're out of Melbourne Airport, but you're not in Sydney. You're not going out of Brisbane. Is that a deliberate strategy, or is it simply too hard to get into those airports?
In the case of Sydney, it's just been too hard. We want to base aircraft. We would like to base aircraft in Sydney. To enable us to do that, you need peak slots in the morning, in the evening, as well as in the middle of the day. We couldn't access those slots. The wonderful thing about airport competition, it's no coincidence that the only multi-airport city that we operate to or that exists in Australia is Melbourne, with Tullamarine and Avalon. And it's no coincidence that that happens to be the only capital city we fly to. In 2026, the good news is that Sydney will become a multi-airport city, and we would look to fly to both airports. But between now and then, we'd dearly love to get into Kingsford Smith, but that requires not only the right commercial arrangement with Sydney Airport, but it also, very importantly, very critically, involves having airport slots that can allow us to base aircraft in Sydney. And if we have that, we would fly up to 20 destinations, of which 90% of those destinations do not have low fares at this moment in time. That is significant, and that would be a fantastic opportunity for the Sydney Basin in terms of new routes, but also lower fares.
But I was going to also raise that as you are struggling to gain those slots, what you've done is move to other areas, as you point out, where there's no low-cost carriers, and in particular, many of the tourist destinations on Queensland. So to go to Cairns, to go to Bundaberg, to go to Gladstone, to go to Mackay, but then to go to other places such as Toowoomba, Wellcamp, to go to Newcastle. These are the types of places that you've chosen because you think there is going to be a market there. Is it sufficient to sustain an airline such as Bonza?
So far, what we're seeing is really, really very encouraging. We're not naive enough to think that everything's going to work. No business ever, goes 100% down the path following exactly what they thought worked well on paper. So there will be changes to what, in terms of how we execute. However, we are adaptable. And what's very important to note is that Melbourne is a great example. There are 9 markets that we're servicing out of Melbourne Tullamarine. 7 of those markets are not flown by any other airline. We could do exactly the same as that and more out of Sydney Kingsford Smith if we had the opportunity. We're not about doing the same as the other folks. We are about bringing a little bit of point of difference to the market, especially when it comes to large regional cities, but also opening up new destinations to the mega cities in the country, like Melbourne. We'd like to do the same thing in Sydney.
I'll tell you, it's interesting to note. I'll just finish this up with a little grab that we've got from Gina Cass-Gottlieb today. Just have a listen to this.
We have seen over the past 3 years, as an example of what can occur, that when Rex first entered intercity routes, which previously only Qantas and Virgin were servicing, that there was a substantial drop in ticket prices, particularly in the introductory period, but that it did produce competitive impacts and competitive responses. That's what we would expect to see with the introduction of an expansion of both Rex and Bonza.
We'll keep in touch with you. Tim Jordan, Chief Executive and Founder of Bonza. Many thanks for your time today.
Thank you.